I know your story because I was with you last week doing the mental health first aid. But for anyone that doesn't, tell us what ultimately led to you starting to focus on mental health.
Thank you. So my career actually started 21 years ago. I went to university, and whilst I was there, I got signed up by the Air Force to become a pilot. And that journey through aviation is something that is always stuck with me, and I think always will. Flying, when you get into it, is a bit like an addiction. And for me, it was escapism. It was the fact that when you set the throttle up on the runway and accelerated down the runway, once you'd taken off, that there was nothing you could do about the Amazon delivery or the nappies that you needed. And for me, it was about escapism. And after a very brief career in the Air Force, I remortgaged my family, my house, my grandparents, to become a commercial pilot, because I was determined, even though I'd been told that I probably shouldn't be able to tie my shoelaces together, that I should to be a commercial pilot. So I went to a commercial pilot training school, and from there I went to Flybe as it existed, and I was there for 13 years. And those 13 years were truly what I think kind of defined me as a person. The role as a pilot, going from a first officer in the right hand seat to a captain, everything about it was this sense of family and community. And if the cabin crew were having a bad day, we were having a bad day, but it was everything that we did it together. And having spent 3 or 4 years as a first officer, I then became a captain, and flying into these wonderful places all around Europe. But there was more to it, and I wanted to impart the passion that I had for flying to other people. So I became a trainer, and I was teaching new pilots, old pilots, how to fly. And if the company had wanted someone to teach them the ins and outs of the engines or air law, not me. But I think my role became sort of more pastoral, as I tried to teach people that they were human and they were never going to be perfect, but there were ways to grow and build ourselves as pilots. And the last few years at Flybe, I was an incident investigator. So I was looking at the data from black boxes after an incident or a trend, and trying to put 2 and 2 together and try and work out why people were perhaps operating the aircraft outside of what we'd call standard operating procedures, doing things that were just slightly abnormal. And I'd start these interviews with a, "How are you? How are you feeling?" People usually thought they were coming in for a bit of a rap on the knuckles, let's say, and actually it ended up being a cup of tea and a hug. And it was amazing. I loved doing it, trying to help people understand why they were behaving in these ways. And I found out that it was actually, there were the things that were going on outside of work that were manifesting themselves in the workplace. And it was giving people reasons to understand that. Now, on the 5th of March 2020, this is just a very early beginning of the pandemic, before we'd locked down, the company went into administration, and everything I knew about myself was taken away from me. It was ripped apart, really. I think I defined myself by my job role as a pilot. And when that was taken away from me, I went through this sort of grieving process, this anger, bitterness, the unknowingness of what to do next. And my own mental health just took a massive dive. I crashed and burned, quite kind of literally. I always say this, but I grew really dodgy beard. I started drinking far too much. Just stopped looking after myself. And because I wasn't looking after myself, I couldn't look after the people around me. My wife always talks about my redundancy baths, which kind of stick in my mind as these real low moments of where I would go and sit in a hot bath at 8 o'clock at night and be in the same cold water 4 hours later, having cried a lot, wondering what I was going to do and whether I could actually be bothered to get out of the bath. And it was pretty rubbish. But after a couple of months, I kind of saw hope in the fact that there were people in the same situation as me, with 17,000 unemployed pilots across Europe, as the pandemic unraveled. And it is not just my industry, you know, hospitality, the music industry, just all decimated. But there were people in the same situation that didn't have the support and love of a family and friends. And so I trained as a listener. To listen to what people were going through, and then hopefully signpost them and to give them some support. And I went on a mental health first aid course, and it kind of changed my life, because everything I'd been doing in my previous career as a trainer, it was all about that. It was all about taking the time to listen and hear what was going on for people and trying to ease their pain. So I did that, and I now specialize in teaching mental health first aid, but also in suicide prevention. It's when I tell people what I do, I see them physically recoil and move away, and why are you doing that? And it's exactly that reason, Shannon, why I do that, because I think that it's still such a taboo subject, but it's still such an issue that we really have to be open and honest about it and talk about it. And if we can talk about it, we can then break the stigma that surrounds it, and then perhaps help some people when they are really struggling. And that's what I do. That's why I do it, really, is to try and shine a bit of light on some darkness in some people's lives.
Yeah. And before this sort of period in your life where you suffered with your own mental health issues, how did you kind of see mental well-being, like especially in the workplace? Because obviously you teach it for a living now, about how to apply it in the workplace, but were you conscious about it when you were working at Flybe as a pilot, or was it just something that did not cross your mind?
It got to a stage in aviation where people were working so hard and at breaking point that and because of a history of some incidents that have happened over the years, that it was coming into focus at the very end of my flying career. Fatigue risk management is something, as pilots and other standards, is heavily regulated. You know, the fact that if you've got to go and work in an office or in an aircraft or whatever you do for 12 hours, if you've had a late night, that will affect you the next day. And it was getting to the stage where people were being so overworked on the verge of burnout that the industry was starting to think, we need to do something about this. And so it had become more of a focus for people's well-being. You know, when they were having time off work and time away, that it was quality time. But there's this fine balance, and if anyone finds that balance between what the work-life balance, please let me know. But I think it was getting to the stage where something had to be done, because people were getting to the stage where their own well-being was affecting them in the workplace, and then people become unproductive in the workplace, and then they don't want to be there. So it was beginning to focus, but I think now, you know, and the whole pandemic has just shone this light on this problem that's always been there. But perhaps society has never been so open to it. And I think that's because, you know, of conversations like this, of people talking not only in their workplaces, but in their personal lives about ways to look after ourselves. And definitely in my line of work, if you can't look after yourself, you can't look after someone else. And so that the importance of resilience and being able to self-care and maintain your own well-being is so important.
Yeah. And what more do you think companies can be doing? Because when we first spoke, before I did my mental health first aid, I remember you asking me, you know, is there kind of, you know, people in the business that might suffer with their mental health? And I just said, I literally don't know. And I said, I know that that's not because they don't or won't be suffering, but it's just because nobody talks about it. So I just do not know. So how do you think that barrier between, I mean, I'm lucky, I work in a very close team, we're all very close, and I do think the space is there for people to talk, but in these huge businesses where I imagine it's not so easy for those barriers to be broken down, what do you think people or companies can do to put mental well-being into practice?
There are so many issues there you've just mentioned about, and one of the biggest things, Shannon, is the stigma. The reason that we don't know is because people don't walk down the street saying, I'm feeling really anxious, or I keep hearing a voice, you know, and or I think I might have bipolar disorder. All these things, mental health, because we can't really see it. People don't talk about it. You know, if someone comes into the office with a broken leg, the first thing everyone would do, rush over, want to sign their plaster cast and ask them, oh, how did you do it? How are you doing? But when someone comes back off work from stress, anxiety, no one wants to talk about it because they don't know how to. And that's why there is no a golden ticket for changing a culture. But there are so many little things that we can do to start changing a culture, to make it more open and honest, so people feel that they can bring whatever's going on for them at home into work. For example, on a Monday morning, I've been working with an organization, and rather than talking about the financials for the week and what they're going to achieve financially, they literally, the first meeting on a Monday morning is half an hour of chatting about your weekend, and you're not allowed to talk about work because people feel like that they can't bring that into the workplace. And I think that's a wonderful initiative. The company that says sometimes there are tears on a Monday morning because something so awful has happened. But they've got that out, and it means that when something does go wrong during the rest of the week, someone might have the sense that actually that there might be a reason that they're not performing that well, and perhaps why don't we just go for a coffee? Let's not concentrate on the problem and just perhaps think about why the problem exists. I mean, of course, there's mental health first aid training, but getting mental health first aiders installed within a business is only part of the solution. I keep talking about changing a culture as this oil tanker, that trying to turn it round is really difficult. But if you've got lots of little tugboats attached to it, and each of them make tiny little movers, slowly you can change a culture to do that. And it's about getting people engaged. It's about having champions of mental health, so who actually say, actually, I've had this problem before, and I feel that I can stand up and talk to my colleagues about it. And by having someone, especially in a leadership role, who says that, it filters down throughout the rest of the company, and people realize that it is all right to talk about these things. So it's about having champions, whether that is someone new to the company or has been around a long time, that can speak openly honest about their own personal experience. And it's about having initiatives to promote positive mental health. It's about perhaps having a newsletter that goes once a month. They're trying to set our tasks of once a week. It might not happen, but if we can do these tiny little things to start changing a culture, we can then start to turn it around so that people feel like they can actually be themselves in the workplace. You know, the statistics for stress, depression, and anxiety due to workload are I mean, off the scale at the moment. And we know that roughly 40% of all illnesses at work are actually due to mental health. But we don't know how many people feel like they can actually tell the truth when they call in sick. Do they say, oh, actually, I'm off because I've got the flu, when actually it's that they're so anxious about perhaps an upcoming appraisal or something else going on in their lives that they actually can't physically bring themselves to come into the workplace. So sorry, that was a very long-winded answer, but there are lots of things. It's about engaging with the employee assistance program. You know, it is having a book of resources for everyone to access, whether that is worrying about someone that might be having an eating disorder, or worrying someone, you know, at the extreme, worrying about someone that they seem so low that and hopeless that perhaps they're thinking of ending their own life. And it's about having those resources available to everyone, and not tucking mental health as a sort of, okay, we'll tick that box and just push it to the side, and then when people want it, they'll know where to go.
And obviously you speak about kind of the period in your life where your mental well-being wasn't, you know, at its best, and through your work you've inspired so many people to get help or to kind of inspire that change in their life. And obviously this whole video series is about inspiring change, but I want to ask, who is one extraordinary person who's inspired change for you?
That is a very good question. All right. And the first person, we always say, the first person that comes to mind is my wife.
Yeah.
And she has been so supportive of me. And she's only known me as this quite driven aviation pilot.
Yeah.
And she has been so cool, calm and collected over me being awake at 2 o'clock in the morning going, what on earth am I doing with my life? I've done, all I've known is aviation, and now I've had this chink or this I was going to say glitch in the matrix, but something's clicked for me to actually, this is the path I'm taking, and perhaps I was always supposed to do this. And I think she is inspirational in the fact that she can stay so cool, calm and collected through all this turbulence that I've been going through. And she really is like inspirational to me. We've been together for a long time, and she still sticks by me for every move.
Yeah.
And I thought, when you asked that, Shannon, am I going to come out with some amazing celebrity? I'm like, no, actually. and actually thinking about it, there are so many people in our worlds that can be inspirational, and it doesn't have to be the person with the most Instagram followers, or it can be someone that we know that just takes the time to listen to us and try and understand what's going on for us. And for me, Shannon, she's that person.
That's nice.
She's going to hate me for saying that.
No, I think she'll enjoy that. But no, I agree that sometimes in the past when I've asked that question, people go for like, Obama or like these big people. But I completely agree, and especially after doing the mental health first aid course with you last week, that if you just take the time to listen to someone, then you can be that person that inspires change for them or helps them get that support that they need. So I think this is why I wanted to get you on Epic Talks, because I think you're doing that for a lot of people, and you're obviously inspiring that sort of effect, the ripple effect of everyone else helping other people. So no, thanks for coming on.
No, my absolute pleasure. I think you're absolutely right. It is all about just taking that time, even when we think, oh, do I really want to have this conversation with that person? It's about It is, and it's about giving that someone a smile in the morning, or saying good morning, that we don't know what's going on in other people's worlds, and we can affect it by just having the time to have that sort of kind and caring conversation.